Good morning. We've been asked quite a few questions on the upcoming employment support scheme that's being run through the MPF returns. So we've put together a few little slides just to explain some of the key details and most importantly some of the clarifications that have come out over the last week. First of all, some background. This has been spoken about since early April and various versions of it have come out. The key facts that are maintained are that as an employer, you have to choose a month between December and March 2020 to be your baseline month. That will have a certain number of employees on it, and those are the number of employees that you'll have to maintain. Note, the salary per employee doesn't need to be maintained. So if you've swapped a junior staff for a senior staff, it's their head count that actually counts between those numbers. The amount of subsidy is 9,000 Hong Kong dollars per month, that's a maximum, or 50% of their salary. So if a staff member is paid $10,000 a month, then the subsidy would be 5,000. If they're paid 30,000 a month, the subsidy would be capped at 9,000. The payment period proposed at the moment is between June and November, that's 6 months, and this is going to be in 2 tranches. The first tranche, the details have been announced. The second tranche, they're still in discussion. The application is coming up in late May, and the eligibility, as we say here, is it's every employee on the employee's payroll in your baseline month, so that's the December, January, February, March month that you've chosen. Now, very importantly here is that you have to maintain that head count. So if you are choosing March 2020 and you have 5 employees, you have to maintain those 5 employees through this period. The government has been quite clear that if people resign, you're expected to replace them and replace them essentially within that month. The government has come to say that they don't anticipate hiring to be a difficult thing during this period, and so quite simply you have to rehire. Now, we can argue that for junior staff that might be the case, but for senior staff that might be very hard. The government hasn't considered that. They're just insisting the headcount is maintained. There's also been some talk about how that's going to be enforced. People I've spoken to are talking about how the government are going to rely on people essentially making complaints. So if you make a junior member of staff redundant and you don't rehire someone, but you put your husband or your wife or your brother, your sister on the payroll just to maintain the head count, they are anticipating that redundant employee would complain and then they'll go in and they'll audit you. The second very important consideration is that these subsidies have to be used to pay wages. If there's going to be any unpaid wages, then the government are going to look very unfavourably on this, as with the Labour Department and the courts, etc. So this subsidy has to go down to the employees. Now, for Hong Kong, this is a great thing. This is actually money in the pockets of people being employed that they can go out and spend. Some clarifications that came out over the last week. The MPF scheme has to have been set up as at 31 March 2020. So if you suddenly decided that you were going to employ yourself and register, or you'd kept people off the MPF wrongly, it's too late. The MPF had to be set up as at 31 March 2020. And secondly, importantly, all these contributions had to be paid up before the 7th of May 2020. Now, the details of the second tranche are still pending. My hope is that these dates will be relaxed slightly. I have a few clients who were trying to set up their MPF in February, but due to the protests, due to the coronavirus, a lot of the providers have been very slow at opening accounts. Self-employed was also clarified in the recent items. If you have an MPF account, even if you haven't been contributing to it recently, it looks like you can get one subsidy of $7,500, but only one, not one per account, just one per self-employed person. The website for application is going live on around the 25th of May, and that should be quite straightforward. It will basically just be your MPF scheme number, consent for the MPF to provide information to the government, and your bank account details. the hope on that is that this will be an electronic transfer back to you, not a check that you'll need to bank. One thing to think about is some people who maybe have virtual bank accounts such as Neat, where your bank account name is Neat-company name. That may not match the company name on the MPF, so that may cause a problem when they try and send those payments through. That's something to be thinking about. Is that going to be a concern or not? Otherwise, we await what's going to happen in the second tranche, what's going to be new, if this is going to be extended, and we advise people to think very carefully before they claim for these amounts, make sure it's legitimate, and we strongly recommend that you do a cash flow to ensure you will be keeping this headcount, because if you do not maintain the headcount, as well as the money being paid back, there will be financial penalties, which won't be helpful to you at all. Any questions, please feel free to get in touch and we'll see how we can help you. Thank you very much.